Good afternoon. Welcome to Creative Explorer. My name is Michael Mandaville, and today's video is about taking a risk. Risk is something that all of us do each and every day. You'll notice that you go to the supermarket, and on your way there, you actually get into traffic, where certainly you've got a lot of distracted drivers, a lot of people hurrying, etc., and maybe not paying attention to the road. I've even seen some things where people are putting on nail polish or somebody's playing a game on the dashboard while they're driving, I guess to pass the time. But that being said, then you get to the supermarket and you decide, okay, I'm just going to buy this food, and you are certainly hoping that it's all been looked at and inspected properly and that it's all going to be okay. Then later that night, you might just go and say, I'm going to go to an amusement park, jump on a ride, go on a roller coaster, all that sort of thing. Well, what you're doing is you're actually trusting the institutions that took you through this process. For driving, you trust the state Department of Motor Vehicles, here in California would be, or you trust at the supermarket the food inspectors, the FDA, local vendors, and probably their insurance companies that will hammer them out of business unless they have certain protocols they adhere to. And then when you go to the amusement park, you certainly hope the technicians and the maintenance personnel have kept up on the roller coasters and all the mechanical issues there. So you are trusting these institutions. But what do you do when you want to personally grow and take a risk? And in this case, for example, one time I did this and I wanted to do stand-up comedy. And stand-up comedy is something I always wanted to do. I admired a lot of the people there, and it's just one of those things that I thought would be quite an interesting art form. It scared me quite a bit, but I wanted to say the risk and the reward, were they worth it? How am I going to grow? And some part of growing is that you're in a circle. And as I teach martial arts is really just about growing. It's about character, and it's about living a good moral life, one in service to other people. And I tell people that you have a circle around you. And when you push on that circle and move it out a little in one direction for growth or your physicality or emotional state or whatever it is, well, by definition, your circle gets bigger because it maintains this circle. So you push out in one area and the circle grows bigger, but guess what? The circle grows bigger all around in your other areas. It influences your life and how you're going to grow in other areas, even if you just push in one. So that's one good way to say, here's part of the reward. That's what I thought. So one is that you have to actually kind of do a risk-reward assessment. On this basis, I use grid paper. And I like grid paper. You can see in my other videos, but it's non-linear thinking. So for that, I like to put in risk and reward. And you want to get out of your brain. Your chatter in your brain, this is one of the worst things that happens, is you will have a lot of negative thoughts in this voice in your head. But when you have actually reduce it to paper, now you could do some clear thinking. What's the risk? What's the reward? And in the case of stand-up comedy, my example, I said, well, the risk is humiliation. Once you've got kids, that's no longer an issue. And no applause, maybe losing the money for a course I put in or the time, etc. But the reward was growth, fun, applause, chance to work on writing, maybe some kind of acclaim of significance if somebody enjoyed the show, and all these positives here. So I decided I'm going to give it a try. So the second part is that you actually have to go and get some training or knowledge. In this case, I've actually very much a curiosity-driven person. I like knowledge, I like books, I like to read, research, and certainly Google now makes it a lot easier for everybody. So I found a gentleman who does stand-up comedy. His name is Greg Dean, and I took the class a number of times, maybe 5 or 6 times. In total, I've gone up about 40 to 50 times doing stand-up comedy, anything from open mics to a couple bookings, etc., and kind of got a good feel for it and enjoyed it. And so that was part of my growth pattern there. Some of the books you have to be aware of aren't very good. Some are. So you have to do some research on doing that. But once you gain this knowledge, you gain confidence, and that's about confidence building. For those of you who'd like to see where knowledge leads you, I encourage you to watch a documentary called Free Solo. This is about a gentleman named Alex Henold, I believe is his name, and he actually went up the face of El Capitan in Yosemite, California, without any safety gear. It's a 3,000-foot ascent, and personally, that's not a risk I would ever undertake. But he has a lot of experience, an enormous amount of training, and the documentary is worth watching because of this. So here's an extreme risk. Somebody's willing to make an assessment and do it. And you can find these extreme risks all around. There's a woman named Ocean Ramsey who actually swims with great white sharks. Part of her reward is that she can inform the public that the great whites have a place in the ecosystem and not to be completely fearful of them in the ocean. So that's her mission. Both of those things I really wouldn't undertake. But people assess risk management differently, and that's what you do with your life. And these people, the gentleman climbing or the woman who swims with the sharks, are probably growing enormously in their particular field of endeavor. So that's one thing to make sure you do, is to gain knowledge, do some research, and start to come up with a plan to build your confidence. One of the final pieces that you have to deal with is the actual fear itself, of course. The element of fear is something that everybody encounters, and I always like the acronym that spells it out. Fear is false evidence appearing real. So in that case, you've worked up an emotional state. When I did this stand-up comedy, the night before, when I was sleeping, I woke up 3 times to change my shirt. My subconscious was going so much in a fearful direction that I completely sweated through 3 shirts. And then I finally got to the comedy store in the green room, which is upstairs, and there's a little window there which leads out onto the roof. And of course, my mind starts going, do you know I could actually smash this window, climb on the roof, shimmy down the rain gutter that I saw in the front, and run off? And I'd only have to apologize to about 12 people, friends of mine in the audience. So that's kind of the way your brain will start going when it deals with fear. But then what happened is I said, okay, I'm going to get up there one way or the other and do it. Oh, and another aside is I wound up drinking about 5 quarts of water before I got up there, and I didn't use the restroom once. I didn't piss a teaspoon, I'm telling you. I was sweating so much. So anyways, I get up there, I do my bit, I get off, and afterwards I go, well, that wasn't so bad. I'd really worked myself up to quite a frenzy there of fear. And by the time I actually did another 15 sets at various establishments, I was a bit surly. I could dive into the audience. Comedy's counterintuitive. If your material isn't working, you dive into the audience. And once you dive into the audience, then you could start playing with them. Then it's the actual creation of the art form, and everybody knows it's spontaneous because the audience will be different next time. So that's an important part of it and a lesson that I learned. But it's really good because I got a great deal out of it. Public speaking is a lot easier because stand-up comedy is much, much more difficult. So the idea is that you actually deal with fear on a one-by-one basis. There was a famous actor, I think, in the early 20th century, and he said, well, on his deathbed, he said, well, dying is easy, comedy is hard. And I always reflect back to that it would have been easier for him to die than do comedy, but I gave comedy a try, and I'm better for it. So when you get a chance, just remember that you can take a risk assess what you're doing and manage that risk, and then jump in. There is no fail. It's either learn or succeed, and you can do it. Thanks again for watching. Michael Mandaville here at Creative Explorer.